He who can do this has the whole world with him. He who cannot walks a lonely way. Wow, what is this thing? This one ability that promises you everything and warns of a lonely life if you don't have it. It sounds so mysterious, right? Almost like magic, but it's actually something really, really practical. So, let's dive right in. That quote, it's the key to everything we're talking about today. It's the one fundamental secret to influencing people, and it comes straight from the master himself, Dale Carnegie. Over just the next few minutes, we're going to unpack his single most powerful, and you'll see, surprisingly simple principle. Okay, so to find the secret, we actually have to start by looking at where almost all of us go wrong. You know, when we're trying to convince someone to do something, anything really, we make this simple, super common, and let's be honest, deeply human mistake. We just talk and talk and talk about what we want. And this little story just illustrates the problem perfectly. So Dale Carnegie, he loved strawberries and cream. I mean, who doesn't? But when he went fishing, did he put his favorite dessert on the hook? No way. Of course not. He used worms. And why? Well, the answer is so obvious it's almost funny, isn't it? You don't bait the hook with what you want. You bait it with what the fish wants. And that simple logic, that's exactly how it applies to people. The wrong bait, our strawberries and cream, that's us talking about our own needs, our own wants. The right bait, the worm, is figuring out what the other person wants and talking about that. I mean, think about it. You are endlessly interested in what you want. But guess what? Nobody else is. You know, this mistake isn't new at all. Even a genius like Ralph Waldo Emerson fell right into this trap. The story goes, he and his son were trying to get a calf into a barn. Emerson pushed from behind, his son pulled from the front. So what happened? Exactly what you'd expect, a total stalemate. They were only thinking about what they wanted. And the calf? Well, it was doing the exact same thing. Okay, so we've totally nailed down the problem. Now let's flip it and talk about the solution. This is the big idea, folks. This is the secret that unlocks the whole thing. And here it is. Carnegie called it arousing an eager want in the other person. The key idea is this: the only way on earth to influence anyone to do anything is to make them want to do it. And how do you do that? You focus completely on what they desire, and then you show them how your idea is the way they can get it. And listen, this isn't just some Dale Carnegie thing. Check out this quote from Henry Ford. We're talking about one of the most successful industrialists ever. And he said, the one secret to success is this exact same ability, to get the other person's point of view. I mean, when Henry Ford and Dale Carnegie are saying the exact same thing, it's probably a good idea to pay attention. But here's the crazy part. Even though this idea is so simple, so obvious, right? Carnegie figured that 90% of people on this planet ignore it 90% of the time. We just can't seem to help ourselves. We keep talking about our strawberries and cream. All right, enough theory. The real test of any idea is, does it actually work in the real world? So let's look at 3 quick case studies. These will show you just how powerful this principle is when you really put it into practice. So let's start with a really high-stakes problem Carnegie himself had to deal with. He'd rented a big hotel ballroom for a lecture series. The tickets were already sold, all the announcements were out, and then, bam, he gets a letter. The rent is going up by 300%. What's your first reaction? Mine would be to storm in there and start a huge argument. But that's not what Carnegie did. Nope. Instead, he went to the manager and basically said, hey, let's figure out what's best for you. He literally took out a piece of paper and drew up a list of advantages and disadvantages, all from the hotel manager's point of view. So, on the plus side for the manager, a free ballroom for things like dances and conventions that might make more money. But on the minus side, losing Carnegie's business completely, which meant zero income from him, and losing all that great free advertising his popular lectures brought in. And the result? It was incredible. Once the manager saw it all laid out like that from his own perspective, he dropped the increase from a whopping 300% all the way down to just 50%. And the best part? Carnegie got the deal he needed without saying a single word about what he wanted. Okay, let's switch gears to a more personal problem. This one comes from the other Carnegie, Andrew Carnegie, the famous industrialist. His sister-in-law was just worried sick. Why? Because her 2 sons, who were away at Yale, had completely stopped writing home. She'd send letter after letter and get nothing but radio silence. So Andrew Carnegie makes a bet. He wagers $100 that he can get a reply by return mail without even asking for one. Here's what he did. He wrote his nephews a nice, friendly, chatty letter. And then, at the very end, in a little PS, he casually mentioned that he was sending each of them a $5 bill. But here's the genius part. He mailed the letter, but he forgot to actually enclose the money. He baited the hook perfectly with something he knew they would absolutely want. So, what do you think happened next? I bet you can already guess, right? He got letters back almost immediately. They were all, "Thank you, dear Uncle Andrew, for his kind note," and, oh yeah, they just happened to gently point out his little oversight about the money. Okay, one last story, and this one is so relatable. A father named Stan Novak was dealing with a classic parenting nightmare. His little son, Tim, was supposed to start kindergarten, but instead he was on the living room floor, kicking and screaming his head off, yelling, "I will not go." Now, Stan's first instinct, like most parents, was probably just to yell, "Get your shoes on, you're going." But he stopped himself. He actually paused and asked, "Okay, if I were Tim, what would make me excited about kindergarten?" So he and his wife sat down and made a list. They totally ignored what they wanted, for Tim to just go, and focused entirely on the fun stuff a little kid would actually want to do. So that night, the family starts finger painting at the kitchen table. And of course, Tim wants to join in. They just say, "Oh, you have to go to kindergarten first to learn how to do this." They talked up all the awesome fun things he was going to do there. And the result? The next morning, Stan comes downstairs, and there's Tim, sound asleep in a chair by the front door, already fully dressed. He told his dad, "I don't want to be late." See? They created that eager want. So these stories, they just prove it, right? This principle is incredibly powerful. But the big question is, how can we start using it, like today? Let's break it all down into a super simple, practical action plan. First off, you gotta understand the world we live in. It is just full of people who are focused on themselves, on what they want. So what does that mean? It means that the rare person, the one who genuinely tries to see things from the other side, who unselfishly tries to serve the other person's interests, that person has a massive, almost unfair advantage. There's just not a lot of competition. And that brings us to a really simple two-step action plan. Step 1. Before you try to persuade anyone of anything, just pause. Seriously, stop yourself from jumping right in with what you want. And step 2, in that little pause, ask yourself this one critical question. How can I make this person want to do it? And that's it. That's the whole secret. That's the one skill. If you can just burn that question into your brain and make it a habit to ask it before every single important conversation, it can totally change your results. Because, let's go back to the beginning. He who can do this has the whole world with them. He who cannot, well, he walks a lonely way.